Thank you so much for coming this evening. It's lovely to see you all. So you've been looking at my picture for a very long time. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I have been doing hypnotherapy for 11 years now. Before that I was a teacher for a long time in Enfield, and I had a long and quite exhausting career in education, which was very, very fulfilling but also quite exhausting. And unfortunately I got very ill with a chronic illness in my 20s, and by the time I was in my 30s I was pretty burnt out. So I know a lot about boundaries and taking, being too kind to other people and not being kind enough to myself. I'm speaking from personal experience. So in my sort of early 30s, I decided that standing up in front of children every single day wasn't going to be the thing I was going to do forever anymore. But I knew that I loved helping people, and that was the thing that brings me immense joy. So I went and retrained as a hypnotherapist. I did some other courses beforehand. But basically what I'm hoping to share with you is the message of the book that I've written, and it's all about being kinder to ourselves, understanding where we're giving a lot of our energy away, where we're not having good boundaries, and just sort of learning how to make decisions based on what works for you but also works for other people. So I do think there are opportunities to do things so that they're a win-win. It's not just if you're being good to yourself that you're being unkind to somebody else. So I really want to show also that a lot of the people I work with are quite sensitive. And when I say sensitive, I mean the kinds of people who say to me, when I was a child, people said to me, "Oh, you're too sensitive, you feel everything too deeply." And the reason I know this is because I'm one of those people. So always being sort of very empathic and feeling everything very deeply is quite tiring and exhausting. So there's something here about protecting our energy. So that's the other thing I wanted to share with you. Okay, so, and by the way, the people I work with are usually very kind. I don't know how, but these people are the ones I attract. They're the ones who come to me. Lovely, lovely people, and they are usually hoping to improve how they feel about themselves. That's part of what they're coming for. That's not normally the thing they say, but that's often one of the side effects of what they want. Okay, so this evening's talk is about becoming our own best friend. So when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking, what does that actually mean? So for many of us, our first best friend might have been in our childhood. And certainly for me, when I met my first best friend, it was like a sort of, like a love affair. It's like the first time you ever felt that way about somebody. You just couldn't be without them. And that best friend that I had as a child is still a very, very close friend of mine, and I would go to the ends of the earth for her. So there's something about an unconditional sort of feeling for her. We've been through all sorts of ups and downs in life, and we've commiserated together, we've celebrated together, we've laughed and cried and been through all sorts of life stages together. And I think that's what I'm talking about when I say that we speak to a best friend or a really good friend, or if you don't have a best friend, because we're grown-ups, most of us have several friends, but you might have a loved one or somebody that you care deeply for, and you would speak to them with kindness and compassion and empathy. But sometimes you might take them aside and tell them some home truths, or you might say to them, actually, I don't think what you're doing is really helping you. Maybe there's a different way. But you would do that with compassion and empathy and kindness, because you want them to have the best. You want the best for them. So they can be a sounding board for you, or they can be somebody who can offer a different perspective. So all of those things that we think about with a best friend, I want to get you to imagine that if there was a way for you to have that for yourself, how might that be? And some of you may think, well, I'm pretty, okay with myself, and I have a good relationship with myself. Some of you might think, well, I've never really thought about it like that. So just see how this lands for you. It may be that it makes sense, and it may be that you think of something new. Okay. So I love this quote, which has been attributed to Confucius, but obviously because it was such a long time ago, we don't know exactly how he said it, and it's been translated. Something like, and remember, no matter where you go, there you are. So wherever you go, there you are. So anything you have experienced in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, you were there. You were there, you've seen it all. And you are the one who will be there till the end as well. So you may have that best friend, you may have that companion, that spouse, that child, that anybody, but the person who will be with you all the way through everything is you. So that's why I think it's really, really important to improve the relationship that we have with ourselves as much as possible. Not to inflate our sense of self in any way, but just have a healthy relationship with ourselves. So I just thought that was quite an interesting thought. Okay, so what are the barriers that you might have to befriending yourself? Because it sounds very easy to say, well, you're there from the beginning till the end, be your best friend, but we have lots of barriers. So for some people, they may or may not know it, but they may have low self-esteem. And this comes from lots of different places. You can, when I was a teacher, I would notice that even some very young children wouldn't have the same level of self-esteem as other young children. And you would think, you know, I know their parents, they've got a lovely family, they've got a really nice life, I'm a great teacher, they're having a great time at school. But for some reason, they just didn't sort of present in the same way as some other children. So I would say that everybody has a set point with any of these things. We all have a set point with, you know, whether we're optimistic or if we're more realistic or if we're a bit pessimistic about things. So we tend to have a set point as you know, how we are when we're born. Obviously you've got genetics, you've got culture, society, experiences and so on. But for some people it's the sort of lack of positive role models, so they may not have seen very positive role models of how to have high self-esteem. I definitely found that with the children whose parents were demonstrating high self-esteem, they had high self-esteem because the level of language and the kind of reflective talking was different in those households. For many people, they've had many challenges over their lifetimes, and so many people resolve a lot of those issues, but to be honest, all through life we're resolving issues. You know, issues come and go all the time. But sometimes those sort of issues might be unresolved, and it can leave people very depleted, and that can affect someone's self-esteem. And just like confidence, self-esteem is something that can go up and down over time, but it's also something that can be grown and improved. So I'm going to ask you to think to yourself, if you were to think on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how well, just in your mind, how well do you know yourself? So on a scale of 0 to 10, so you might think, yeah, I know myself quite well. It's about whatever number it is. So how well do you know yourself? That's the first question. So just think of that number in your head. Okay. The second one is how much do you accept yourself? So you might know yourself very well, but you might not accept what you know, or you might accept what it is, but not really know yourself. There might be more to learn. You might think, well, there's parts of me I haven't really tapped into. And the final question is quite a hard one, I would say, is how much do you like yourself? Out of 10. So just as a little sort of measure for yourself. Now, if you find that your numbers are below 5, if all of your numbers are below 5, I would say that it would be worth exploring these areas for yourself. If your numbers are between 5 and 8, which is what I would say is usually when I meet people who come and work with me, they might be below 5 or they might be between 5 and 8, and they say, oh, you know, one of them's a bit high, one of them's a bit low. If you are around the 8 or above mark, I would say that you probably are feeling quite good in your relationship with yourself, but there's always room for improvement. And I think all of this is about resilience. So we never know, you know, I might be feeling wonderful right now, but tomorrow a curveball might come out of the sky, and then I need to, you know, be resilient and be ready to deal with that. So, and you know, we all know when things have happened in our lives, but it's how your bounceability, how strong your bounceability is. You know, we all have challenges, and some things you can't predict, but it's how you pick yourself up from those challenges. Okay, I hope you found that interesting. Okay, so again, when you think about boundaries and people being very, very nice and always trying their best to help everyone and actually getting very tired and exhausted themselves, you sometimes hear this word or this phrase, people pleasing. And you know, lots and lots of people do this, so it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something I wanted to bring up so that we can understand what it's about, why we do it. So often you find that these patterns have been there since childhood. So it could be that we are trying to placate somebody, or we're trying to please somebody. So in the case of some of my clients, I have found that they may have grown up in a household where it was very, very strict. They were quite scared, and they didn't want to upset the person who was bringing them up. And that could be a parent, or it could be somebody else. You know, I've worked with people who grew up in foster care and different kinds of care, and sometimes they were pretty frightened. So their behaviour was trying to placate those people and not incur their wrath, you know, which is a very sad thing, obviously. So sometimes we are, you know, it's not about that. It's just that we're trying to be kind. We're trying to be nice. We grow up in a society where we are told it's good to be kind. It's good to be helpful. It's good to think of other people. And, you know, anyone who's had any kind of religious teaching from childhood, you know, pretty much every religion says, help, love thy neighbour, help your friends, look after people, etc. But what they often don't say is, but also look after yourself, because you might overdo it and then you'll be exhausted and unwell and all of those things. So sometimes we can do it for a number of different reasons. So we like to help others. It gives us a sense of purpose, you know, when we're volunteering or we're helping. And it makes us feel needed. You know, we've got some reason to get up and do something because somebody's waiting for us or expecting us. And we want to be liked. You know I've definitely done things in my younger years when I just wanted to be liked and accepted and part of the gang. And that's all completely normal. And also, you know, we might think, oh, if I do something nice for somebody, they'll be grateful, then they'll be nice to me. So there's a sort of transactional part of it without us even thinking it. Unconsciously, it's kind of there. Sometimes we do things that we didn't really want to do. We didn't really want to do that favour for somebody, but we accepted it because we didn't want to be the one to say no, because it looks selfish or rude or something else. But it's just interesting to know why we are doing things when we're doing them. And some time ago someone said to me, if you agree to do something, do it wholeheartedly, so that after you put the phone down or, you know, had the conversation, you can say, yeah, I'm really happy with that decision. If you find yourself going, oh no, why did I say yes to that? I've done it again, you know, that's when you know you might be sort of following that pattern. Okay, a quick show of hands. Has anyone come across the drama triangle before? This is something that you might be familiar with. Okay, so with the drama triangle, this is somebody called Stephen Karpman popularised this. And so if you look at it, I've used sort of Disney type characters so that we can understand the archetype of the characters. So we have a persecutor who is the person who's saying, oh, you're not able to do this, you need my help, you can't do it, you're not really strong enough, you don't know how to, and so on. We have the victim, who is the person saying, I can't do this on my own, there's no way I can do this. And then you've got the character here who's like the charming prince saying, don't worry, I can help you, I can fix this for you. So, by the way, sometimes in different scenarios, the persecutor could be a circumstance. So it could be the lack of a job, or the government, or whoever. There's some sort of baddie that's in that role. So it doesn't have to be a human, a person. When you're looking at the victim, this is the one we're probably most familiar with, because we talk about, oh, they've got victim mentality, oh, those people aren't helping themselves because they're just saying, I can't, I give up, Sometimes what happens is, they're in that situation for a variety of reasons, and we were speaking before about circumstances and different things depleting someone and having low self-esteem, or not having the role models, or whatever. But for some reason they're in that situation, and it's often that they've become used to being helped as well. So the rescuer, who is really trying to help, really wants the best for this person, probably going out of their way trying to support them, is sometimes ends up switching places and becoming the persecutor and saying, I've given you all that help and you still haven't done it, or I've helped them so much and yet they aren't doing their part. So what happens with these roles is that people often switch in the roles. You might find, if this sounds at all familiar, you may find that this goes completely over your head because you haven't met anyone like this, but you often find this in families, and if you're someone who's got siblings and parents, or have had parents and siblings at some point in your life, you might recognize some of these roles within those people, because that's the first place most of us have our memories if we've grown up in a family. It's quite interesting that when one parent, let's say one parent is telling off the child, let's say there's one child, and the other parent sticking up for them, being the rescuer, saying, oh no, they did try and do their homework, and then sometimes they switch, and the child is being the rescuer trying to help one of the parents while the other one's telling them off. So, this sort of happens, they move around. So I just wanted to show you that, because it's something, these are patterns that we fall into unconsciously. We don't think, oh, I'm going to persecute someone, or I'm going to be a victim now, or I'm going to try and rescue somebody, but it's just something that happens unconsciously. Okay, so at this point I thought it's quite useful to talk about boundaries. So what are boundaries? We talk about boundaries all the time, and the way I look at them is they're sort of invisible lines. We can't see them, but we unconsciously create them, and to make ourselves feel comfortable. So how do we know where a boundary is? It separates what's me and what's not me, and it sort of helps us stay in the comfort zone. So here I am comfortable, and the next space it's a bit uncomfortable, and then after that it's not at all comfortable, and then after that it's absolutely no go, that's out of the question. So we've all got our lines where we know where that is in different situations, and boundaries can help us feel really safe because we know what our role is and what's expected of us. And again, working with children for a long time, I really know that children need a lot of structure, and the more clear the boundaries are, or the clearer the boundaries are, the easier it is for them to know what is expected of them, how they are supposed to behave, what they're supposed to achieve, what they're meant to do, etc. So I'll give you a really simple example. If a friend said, oh, it's one of our friends' birthday, we would want to know the date. Do they have any dietary preferences? Do they have any dietary requirements? Are they allergic to chocolate or something? How many people are coming? Etc. If you just were asked to just do the cake, you'd want to know those details. So it's almost like making the boundaries smaller in order to give yourself that structure. So I always think of this example. In my first year of teaching, it came to Christmas, which was like, got through the first term of the first year of teaching, which was exhausting. Got to Christmas and went into the cupboard and got all the sequins and all the paper and everything. And I was so excited to give this all to the children, and gave them all their pieces of card, and they were so excited, and there was an absolute storm all over the floor, and they just didn't make very nice cards. They were messy, there was glue everywhere, and it was a disaster to clean up. And then I was thinking, oh my goodness, they can't take that home. That's not a very nice Christmas card. So I spoke to a more experienced colleague who said, just give them a couple of different designs. Say, this is design A, this is design B. Cut down the number of elements, like you can have 10 sequins, so they're really careful about how they use them. And here's design C, which is free choice. And actually about 2 children did their own thing, and all the rest chose A or B. And they all produced something beautiful, and they all had a Christmas card to take home. So that was a very good example of how boundaries can help. Okay, so that helps adults and children. So when we actually let our boundaries be crossed, and I phrased it that way because it's the other person who's crossing a boundary doesn't know where your boundary is. I'm not talking about assault or something like that. I'm talking about everyday normal conversations or normal requests that we would consider in a sort of civilized society. So when we are thinking, oh, this is my boundary, but that person's encroaching into I'm not very comfortable, unless we make that clear to them, there isn't any way they can know that, because we're not kind of communicating that. And I think what happens is lots of us, we might feel the internal gut signal, but we might ignore it. Because a lot of the time, particularly if you're a person who's been doing this pattern of behaviour, whether you call it people-pleasing or something else, whatever that label is, if you've been doing that pattern for a long time, you've probably been ignoring your gut feeling and overriding it and saying, oh, that's just silly, I have to do this because it's expected of me, or I always do it, so they expect it. If I suddenly say no, they'll say, oh, what's wrong with her? Why isn't she agreeing to do the thing that she always does? So I think there's something there about when it's been crossed, how do we feel? So I think just when you're thinking about this, what I'm talking about today, I want you to just consider in the back of your mind, has this happened to me lately or at some point in my life? And do I remember the sort of what's happened when that boundary was crossed? And also, how did I feel afterwards? Because I think it's important just for a short moment to tap into those feelings so that we can recognize it if it happens again. Because if we just go, oh, that's gone, it's finished, it's done now, we're not really reflecting on the kind of path of what happened. So the emotions that you feel could be as simple as anger. They could be feeling upset or even confused by, like, I'm not really sure what happened there. And this has definitely happened to me before, where I've walked away thinking, I don't really understand how it got from that to that, and now I'm feeling like this, and I don't know what happened. But I didn't feel confident enough to have that conversation because I didn't want the other person to feel uncomfortable. So I just prefer to feel uncomfortable myself. So you might not even know why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and obviously if it's a major betrayal or something like that, it's quite clear. But most often in everyday life, they're just little strange things that happen. And I think this happens probably more in the workplace, where you don't have that openness to be able to speak to somebody because it would just be too awkward, But I think it's important to tap into what happens to you personally so that you can recognise it. Okay, so a few slides back, I showed you the drama triangle, which was this one. And when I show you the next one, I want you to see that the triangle's flipped upside down. okay? And the names of the people have changed. So, oops, there it is. So it's now flipped. So the one at the top was the victim. The victim has now become the creator. So when I work with my clients, often, not always, but often they come to me in a state where they say, look, I'm normally really robust and creative and I can do lots of different things and I'm a capable person, but this experience has flawed me and I'm not able to find my way back to myself, to how I used to be, strong and positive and all of those things. So they need the help of a therapist to get them to reflect on what's happened so they can get back to that place. Some of the people I see, they say to me, I've never been strong, I've always been a victim, but I've had enough. I've come to this point in my life, or something's happened and I can't live like this anymore, so now I want to change. So as soon as they get in touch with me, I know they have moved from being the victim to being the creator, because they're approaching me. I'm not going over to them and saying, oh, can I help you with your problem? Because then I'd be the rescuer. So they're coming to me already in the position as the creator. So for the creator, I've chosen a picture of a gardener, someone gardening. And this person is saying, what do I want to create? So things are difficult, but what do I want to create with this situation that I find myself in? The person on the left, who was previously the persecutor, has now become the challenger. And I always think of the challenger like a sort of personal trainer. So this personal trainer is saying, come on, you can do this, give me 5 more sit-ups or whatever it is. So this person is, rather than persecuting them, saying you can't do it, they're saying, come on, you can do it, give me some more, give me 5 more laps, give me 2 more sit-ups, whatever it is. Now the person who was the rescuer, who was previously saying, I can help you, oh, here's a list of jobs you could go for, these are some phone numbers you can have, and trying to sort of spoon feed. This person is saying, oh, that's great, how are you going to do that? So they're asking the questions, and that is helping them to become empowered. So rather than saying, I have the power to help you, they're saying, you have the power to help you. How are you going to do that for yourself? So I think this is a really, really important thing. I can't find the word. I think it's a really important model, and I think most of us have at some point in our life felt like a victim, even if it was for 5 minutes, even if it was for a week, a month, a year, however long. We have all been there at some point, because life happens and we can fall into a hole sometimes. But most of us have then managed to flip it and become the creator. So that victim has become the creator and said, right, this isn't very good, this isn't a brilliant situation, what can I do about it? And I'm going to pick myself up and I'll get the help I need and I'll do the things I need to do, and then they get on with it. And I think from the nods I can see people have experienced those things. And it's pretty common for us to also have been the rescuer. So we probably have been that person saying, I can help you, it's all right, I've done it before, let me help you. And I definitely really, really recognise that as a person with great empathy, wanting to help everybody. But actually what I have come to realise, that when you're the rescuer, you're disempowering that person who's in that victim mode. It's like, the phrase, teach a man to fish and he can feed himself for his whole life. If you just give a man a fish today, he can eat for today. But if you teach a man to fish, he can fish for the rest of his life. It's that difference of being the coach rather than being the rescuer. Okay, so how do we improve our boundaries? So now we know how to get out of the victim mode into the
creator.
Thank you. You're listening. That's brilliant. Creator. How to get from the victim into the creator and flip that triangle. So how do we improve our boundaries? So obviously we all know that we should say no when it feels like a no. So the first thing we should do is feel it. So rather than just think it, we should feel it. So for me, I feel everything first. Before I think it, I feel it. So it kind of goes through the feeling system, and then it comes out of the thinking system. And I can see a few nods here as well. So I would say the next time you are asked to do something and you have a request, I would just, if you get an email or a text message, I would take a breath and I would leave it for a little while without seeming rude. Don't just ignore it for days, but just give yourself that time, that pause, so that you can think about, somebody's asked me to do something, how do I feel about that? Do I think, yeah, I would love to do that, that's amazing? Or do I think, not sure, I'm a bit busy, or it's not really bringing me joy, I'm feeling a bit put upon, or whatever. But just give yourself that chance to feel. Now, sometimes somebody will put you on the spot in person and say, hey, would you like to come to blah blah with me? And you're looking right at them. So you don't want to, you can't really just ignore that. You have to come up with something. So you can say, let me just check. I'm not quite sure. I think there might be something on. So you give yourself a little bit of time. So you're not rude. You're not saying, no, I don't want to do that. Because that's what I think a lot of people think when you have strong boundaries. You just say no to everybody and you're selfish and things like that. But I don't think it's quite the same. It's very subtle. But I think there's something here about giving yourself that time, that buffer, in order to really check in with yourself whether you want to do something. Because what I was saying before about doing things wholeheartedly is when you do things wholeheartedly, you feel fantastic about it. You feel great about it, But when you do something grudgingly, the energy is completely different. The person who's inviting you to go to the party or the show or the exhibition or the garden centre or whatever, you don't really want them to feel the energy that you don't want to be there. You wouldn't want to invite someone somewhere and they don't want to be there, and you realise it's a horrible feeling. So it's very subtle and unconscious. So just give yourself that chance to do the things that are a wholehearted yes. And I know, as I'm saying this, you might be thinking, but there are things I have to do. There are duties and obligations and things I have to do in my life which are not easy. And lots of us have those situations as well. So what I would say to you is you have to say to yourself, using your thinking brain this time, that those are things that they're part of my obligations and duties, and there are things I have to do. Some of them are difficult, but I'm going to do them with the best heart and the best intention, and also honour myself in lots of other ways as well. And take yourself into that, I've forgotten the name again, creator mode. Take yourself into the creator mode and say, how can I make the best of this? Okay, so just to recap, to empower yourself and others with better boundaries, become the coach rather than the rescuer. You can have empathy for people, and you can show your kindness without giving too much. When somebody's having a really hard time, you can say to them, I'm really sorry to hear that. That must be a very difficult situation, without immediately saying, oh, I can drive you there, I can do it for you, I can XYZ, which might be a tendency if you've been used to being a rescuer, being a very kind, giving person who ends up depleted and exhausted. It may be that you've been doing that. So you'll have to show your empathy, ask them questions to help them to become the creator. So you're forcing the triangle to move, if you know what I mean. If they're in that victim mode, rather than just immediately trying to help them, show the empathy, ask the questions, and try and say, okay, so how could you make this very difficult situation a bit easier for yourself? What could you do? What could you put in place? And get them to come up with the answer, so they'll be going into the creator mode versus over helping or taking over. Okay. So, how can we use our kindness to an advantage for ourselves. If you're a kind, forgiving, giving person, you might be doing that for other people but not yourself. So there is something about, there's something here about understanding that saying no or creating a boundary, which is a healthy boundary for you, is not selfish. Because I think we're conditioned to not like selfish people or not like selfish acts. Because in our society, it's like the worst thing you can do is be selfish. I mean, obviously there's worse things you can do, but in general, you know, we'll say, oh, that's so selfish. That person left that rubbish on the floor. They dumped their things on the side of the road. They didn't clean up after themselves. They didn't open the door for someone. So selfish. And we judge them for that. So why would we want to put ourselves in that position? But what I'm trying to say to you is, when we're creating a healthy boundary so that we can be kinder to ourselves, we are basically allowing ourselves to shine that kindness back to ourselves. And what I said about your best friend, how would you speak to your best friend? So when you hear the negative voice saying, oh, you're so stupid, why did you do that? Think about your best friend or your loved one or someone you really care for deeply comes to you and says, oh, I made this mistake. You would say, okay, let's think about this. What happened? Oh, right, okay. Well, maybe that wasn't the best thing. And you'd come up with some kind of positive spin on it. So there's something there about how you speak to yourself, what you allow in. So here I've got a picture of an ear, like not to listen to that negativity. And sometimes people say to me, I have this nagging voice that just goes round and round my head. So can I just have a show of hands? Has anybody ever experienced that little voice in their head talking? I'm being really careful where I put my hands. I'll tell you why in a minute. Right, lots of people. So when I experience it, it's often over here. So now what I want you to do with your hand, instead of putting your hand up, I want you to show me where that voice is. So just point. So mine's here. So you've got a few there, over here. Anyone else? Anyone on the top? Or the front?
All front.
And the back? On the left? Okay, so just think about where that voice is. It's not always in your head, by the way. Some people, it comes somewhere else. What I would say to you, wherever it is, try and move that voice. So sometimes it helps to put the voice behind you because it's in the past. Oh, can't hear it now. Or it helps to put it down. Oh, it's really quiet down there. Or it helps to put it like right over there on the other side of the room. So the next time you hear that nagging voice, you can literally figure out where it is and then play around with it. Move the location and see what happens. And at some point you won't be able to hear it. So every time it comes up, you can just put it over there. So there's a little tip for you. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this session, but I'm just going to add a few more things before we go and have our break. So if you want to become your best friend and you want to create the best experience of this life that you can have, it's really important that you create this vision for yourself and work hard to get it. And the reason I say that is, for example, if you were to say, oh, I got into the car and I put into the sat-nav, go somewhere. It doesn't know where to take you. If you were to say, go to the park, it doesn't know which park. You know, you have to be quite specific about how you want your life to be and what you want to experience on the way, and whether you want to take the scenic route, or if you want the direct route, or if you want to take the motorway, or if you're going to ditch the car and go on your bike or go for a walk. So I think it's really important to sort of think, right, if I was just thinking ahead, what do I want for this next phase of my life, or where do I want to end up? Where do I want my, trajectory to be? Or what am I aiming for? What's my vision? And I think it's really important to not just dream about it, but actually work to create it, to make it happen. So whether you're planning a party for somebody, or you're going to apply for a job, or you're going on holiday, or you're going to visit someone, whatever that might be, you have to think of it first, and then you have to design it how it works. I catch the train, I go on this day, I come back over there, I put my cat in the cattery, or whatever the arrangements have to be. So it's really important that you design it the way you want it. Otherwise, it's just happening to you. And some of you were here last year when I was talking about vision boards and creating your sort of year for 2023. Back then I was talking about that. And a lot of this is about plotting things in your future, but then taking the actions that make that happen rather than just expecting them to happen. Because unfortunately there isn't a lot of magic that does that. You have to kind of make it happen. So my first tip is to work on your mindset every single day. So I've been working on this stuff for about 20 years, I would say, and I'm getting better at it as the years are going by. And I still have to work on my mindset every single day. So even though I've done this lots of times, I still get nervous every single time. So it's a case of just talking to yourself and doing the things that you know that work. So if you are, someone who uses meditation and you've learnt the techniques, or you've learnt how to ground yourself, or use your breathing, or take a walk, or whatever it might be that helps you, work on your mindset every single day, and you will know what works for you. And I was just having a conversation with one of the people here who was saying they love swimming, and they go swimming every week at this particular place, and it's a really important part of their week, and that sets them up for the whole week. So that's an example. Again, I would say, we're usually born with a set point. If any of you are parents and you have more than one child, I have one child, but I can see how my child sort of came out with a certain temperament, and you think, wow, where did they get that from? They just came out with it, But if you've got more than one child, or you're around children, you'll see that they're all different. Even if they've got the same upbringing, the same parents, same everything, they just have a different set point. And we're sort of on a spectrum, and obviously you've got genes, personality, education, experience, culture, etc., nurture, nature, and all of that. But we all know someone who has a naturally sunny disposition. We all know someone who has a glass half full way of looking at things, or the other way. But I do think that you can improve your mindset from wherever you are. And as I said, we've all been in that victim feeling, and we've all come to the creator feeling as well. So this is something you can consciously work on. I think feeling and expressing gratitude is one of the most important things we can do. Many of us were brought up with religious teachings. Whether or not we're religious or spiritual now, we were probably brought up with something from school or home. And I really believe that a daily gratitude practice is like one of the most transformational things we can do for ourselves. Meditation is a form of prayer, daily prayer, just saying thank you. Really simple, 2 little words, thank you. And when I was at school, I grew up saying grace before every meal at school. And my son does it at his school now, and I think it's brilliant, because just to be thankful for what's on your plate is pretty amazing. And whether or not you follow a particular belief system or whatever, I do believe that we live in a time and a place where we can cherry pick and pick all the best things from the different places that really connect with us. And for me, this is one of the best practices. And I think it's a really good habit to connect every day with the feeling of gratitude. One of the first sort of pieces of homework I give to my clients is something called 3 gifts. And 3 gifts is where you look back over your day, however hard your day was, however hard your situation is, and you say, these 3 little things are the things that I'm really grateful for today, or they made me smile, or they touched me somehow. And I ask people to write down those 3 gifts, 1, 2, and 3, every day, and then when I see them the following week, I ask them to read them out to me. Sometimes they send them by text, or sometimes they write them in a notebook. And more often than not, those little gifts are simple things in nature. You know, I saw my first snowdrop, or I saw a bird, a robin came and sat on the fence, or somebody smiled at me, or somebody, you know, there's something about nature or humanity connection, something like that. And they're the tiny little things where we can connect with the gratitude. And what I find is that when people have written in their notebooks and they're having a bad day, they can go back and just flick through the book and read over all the little tiny things that made them feel grateful, and it just lifts the spirits. And the other thing about it is, because you're saying to your unconscious mind, I'm going to look for the 3 things in my day which I was grateful for, the next day your mind is searching for those little moments of gratitude. So it just improves your whole outlook on life. And I think there are studies that show if you do this for 28 days, it improves people's optimism and actually can help with people's healing, because they're just so much more open and receptive. Okay, I think this might be the last one before the break. So this is the inner pot of gold, and I came across this. There's a professor, Simon Baron-Cohen, I believe he's at Cambridge, and yes, he is the cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen, who I love as well. So Simon Baron-Cohen has done loads and loads of studies on autism, and I came across this study because I was kind of researching self-esteem, and this analogy I really love. So he said something like, we have an inner pot of gold inside us, and some of us, if we've kind of brought up in a loving home where we were treated really well and we were sort of taught how to feel good about ourselves, we will grow up with this sort of full pot of gold. Now, unfortunately, many people don't have that experience. So what we can do is we can fill our own pot of gold. So the next section, I'm going to be talking a lot about how we fill our own pot of gold, and that's all connected to how we become our own best friend. But I think it's our duty to do this for ourselves, to fill our own pot of gold, so that if we have the highest possible healthy self-esteem that we can give ourselves, we can enjoy more of life, we can shine more of our kindness and our goodness on other people while maintaining our own boundaries and being good to ourselves. And I think that really helps us to create more opportunities for fun, laughter, spontaneity, and actually being much happier. So at that point, I think we've listened quite enough. It's probably time for a cup of tea. So I hope you had a nice break, and this is the second section, and this is the bit how we're going to really think about how we become our own best friend. So let me just, okay, so on the screen here you see a well with 5 circles. Unfortunately, because I've moved the words, it says physica with the L at the bottom, so you'll have to use your imagination. That one says physical, that one says emotional, that one says intellectual. But I've unplugged my mouse, so I can't fix it now. So I came across this model quite a few years ago when I was a teacher, and it's by somebody called Jenny Moseley, who was very pivotal in talking about circle time in schools. So there was a lesson that we used to have where we would get the children to sit in a circle and we would talk about different issues or different problems, and it was like teaching children how to sort of have an open conversation. The teacher would facilitate the conversation. And this lady worked a lot in circle time, but she also worked on teacher wellness and well-being. So this is really when it was at its very sort of early stages of people talking about well-being that I knew of in the early 2000s. And I was sent on a course to go and find out about this so I could come back and tell the teachers about it. And this course was absolutely transformational for me. It was a one-day course in central London, and we got given a nice lunch, and you get all that sort of nice perk of being treated well and valued. And what she was saying was, for a lot of teachers, and you can apply this to your own life, we would work all through the term and then drag ourselves to half term and promptly become sick in the half term, which it happened to me like every single time. And what she said is that we have these different wells: the creative, the physical, emotional, intellectual and spiritual. And we should be filling those wells, so when we draw upon them, they're full. Because if we're just drawing upon our emotional well all the time but never filling it up, at some point it's going to dry out. So she was talking about maintaining some forms of wellness all through the term, so that when you get to half term, you've still got some energy left. And so I'm just using that as an analogy. I know not everybody's a teacher, obviously, but we all have those times in our lives when we're just managing to get through to a certain point. But I would say to you, even when you're working extremely hard, have those moments planned into your week or your month, so that you can take care of yourself in the best way you can. And this is all part of being your own best friend. So rather than just sort of having our busy lives with our distractions, just making sure we have time and space in our lives to give ourselves that depth to that well, filling that well. So just like I was talking about the pot of gold, filling that pot of gold, it's about what gives you joy. So as I go through the next few slides, I want you to consider, which of these wells am I filling really well? Because it may be that one of these is really full because you tend to focus there more. And you may find that one of them or two of them are a bit empty. Actually, I never really go to that well. I don't fill it and I don't really draw upon it, but maybe I could. So just have a think about that as we go through them. So just consider where you would like to place more attention for yourself. Okay, so starting with the physical well, obviously you've got all the different obvious things: exercise, dance, movement, stretching, balance, comfort, joy, freedom, pleasure. So the physical well can be many different things. But if you think to yourself, well, I do lots of very strenuous exercise, but do I relax my muscles? Do I enjoy having a nice cold shower or a hot bath, or jumping into cold water, or do I just rejoice in the freedom of my movement, even if it's restricted? Even if your movement is restricted, there can be freedom in that movement. So just consider how you can use a scale of 0 to 10 and say to yourself, okay, well, with the physical, maybe I'm a 5 or a 6, and maybe I could do a bit more there. Okay, so this one is the emotional well: love, joy, contentment, hope, excitement, resolution, acceptance, and gratitude, which I was speaking about earlier. So again, how much do you fill your emotional well? So are you talking to somebody regularly who brings you joy? When you have a conversation, they spark your curiosity, they make you feel happy. When you're talking to them, you feel yourself lighting up. So, with the physical well, it can be something quite solitary, but with the emotional well, you're usually connected with other people or another person. Or it could be a pet. I've got 2 cats, and I get intense joy from talking to my cats, dancing with my cats in the kitchen, and just enjoying their company, because they're pretty hilarious, and that gives you that sort of emotional connection as well. So with the intellectual well, thinking, learning, growing, expanding, improving, honing, improving something, really, really practicing, re-evaluating and having new perspectives, learning new things. You're all here learning new things. You may be learning things you already know, but in a different way, or you might be hearing new things. But when you're learning, the neural pathways are connecting and neurons are firing together, and they're creating new connections. So you are creating new thoughts by, just engaging in conversation with different people, or considering something from a different perspective, even if it's something you know really well. So just think about, what are you feeding your mind? because nowadays we're bombarded with social media and the media in general. But we have agency, we have choice. And I was just speaking to Leslie, who was just saying about switching off her phone in the evening and just saying, I've done that for today and now that's my boundary and I'm not going to look at it anymore. And you have choice and you have control over those things. And what we choose to feed our minds and what we choose to look at or consume isn't just obviously nutrition, but also the intellectual side of ourselves as well. So this is one I think that is something that lots of people I find miss out, the spiritual. So whether it's formal or informal, meditation, prayer, expansion, beauty, seeking truth, having a mission, a vision, a purpose, a legacy. So, thinking about what am I going to leave behind when all this is said and done? What do I want to be remembered for? What am I what's been my purpose? What do I want to, how do I want to be remembered? I sometimes go to the park and see the bench and it says, it says a nice little line about somebody and I think, oh, that person sounds really nice, that they love this place and there's a legacy there, because when I'm tired I can sit on the bench and enjoy it, and that's a beautiful thing. I know they didn't leave it behind, but they may have said I would like that. So there's something there about sort of something beyond ourselves, something bigger than us and bigger than the everyday. And then the creative. Many people I speak to, they say, well, I'm not really very good at it, but I kind of like, and they've got all these kind of creative gifts. And it could just be your curiosity, your colour, your style. It could be the way you put things together in your home, making things, crafting, writing, music, performance, singing. There's so many different ways of being creative. Could be just the way you put your words together. Lots of people are creative in many different ways. And I think, so I want you to just think back over those 5 wells, and I'm just going to go back and show you them again. Again, apologies, the L's are really bothering me. But when you look at those 5 wells, I want you to just think for yourself, which of those 5 wells do you feel that you could spend a bit more time in? And which of those 5 wells do you think is full and it's kind of, that's the one I spend a lot of time in. So I would say there's probably 3 wells that are very full, and there's 2 that I probably could spend a bit more time in. Because when I go to draw upon them, they're a bit empty. So I know what I need to do. Yes?
Could you flash those up again, each one individually?
Yes, of course I can, yes. No, not at all. So that's the physical one. Okay. So doing things that bring you joy in the physical realm. Okay, this is the emotional one. So again, this could be with yourself or with others. And I'm a real advocate of journaling. And I think, writing things down and thinking about my thoughts, but by writing them down in a journal, in a notebook or a diary, or even on paper. And I find that if I have an emotion that's a bit stuck or isn't shifting, if it's a negative emotion, writing about it and thinking it through with my writing can really help. And then the next one is the intellectual. So there's that one. And the 4th one is the spiritual one. They don't have to be in this order, it's just the order that I wrote them in. And the last one is the creative. Okay, so the next few are just extra things which we all know, taking care of our mind and our body. And I think, there's something here about just I've lost my place. How you speak about yourself, I think, is really important. I was talking about that negative voice, and sometimes we listen to that negative voice and we speak about ourselves with that voice. which isn't really our voice. It's that negative voice, which I said, mine was over here, but I could move it somewhere, and it's not as loud anymore, I can't hear it. And I can transform it into a positive voice. So again, thinking about your best friend or your loved one, how would you speak to them? If your best friend said to me, I've made a really big mistake, I did something really silly, you wouldn't say, you're so stupid. You would say, well, I'm sure it's not that bad. Let's just work out what happened. That's okay, we all make mistakes. Whereas when it's ourselves, we can really, really be very rude and negative. So how you take care of your body and your mind, and how you use your words is really important. And I think even the most simple thing, when I was talking about gratitude before, when someone says, you look really nice, rather than saying, this old thing, it's just so simple to just say thank you. Thank you. You did that really well. Thank you. So having those positive words, I think, is really important. So I think also just allowing yourself to dream. Sometimes we just think, well, how am I going to do that? That's impossible. I can't do that. That's too difficult. It's out of my reach. But I think just allowing yourself to dream and just to see things that inspire you. And, it could be a landscape. It could be a film that you watch. It could be a sunset. It could be anything. It could be a person you meet and they could inspire you. And I read something the other day about envy, which I thought, I don't think I feel envy. And then I had a sort of rude awakening when I realised, well, every time I see something which I want and somebody else has, I think, well, it's all right for them. And I think, maybe that's envy. So the quote that I read said, every time you feel envy, turn it into inspiration. And actually I thought that's such a good idea. The reason I have that feeling is because I desire it. I desire that thing, or that success, or that opportunity, or that experience. So every time I see it and I go, well, they're so lucky, I think, I could have that too. I would love to have that. So instead of letting the negative take over, it's reframing. So earlier on I said about working on your mindset every single day. So everyone I know who works in this field works on their mindset every single day. Nobody's immune, we're only human, and we all make mistakes. But I think honouring your dreams, allowing yourself to have those dreams, and giving yourself the chance to be excited about things is a really positive energy. And lots of people talk about high vibration thoughts, and that's what creates action. So as long as your high vibration thoughts create high vibration action, you're going in the right direction. Okay. So as a hypnotherapist, I'm always considering, I'm always thinking about the unconscious mind. And the thing about the unconscious mind is it's always listening. It never goes to sleep. So when I make recordings for my clients, I say to them, please listen to this as you fall asleep, because that's the time your mind is most open. And it doesn't matter if you fall asleep, because people sometimes worry that, I've had a long day, I put your headphones in and I fell asleep. But actually you're even more receptive, because it's almost like you're out of your own way. So I always describe the unconscious mind as a great big lumbering elephant. It's very slow and deliberate, and it thinks about everything and it remembers everything. And on its back is a very small, excited monkey, which is like the conscious mind, which is flitting from one thing to the other, chasing it, what's this, what's that, and it's constantly moving. But at some point, the monkey gets tired and falls asleep, but the elephant is still listening. So be wary of your thoughts, because your unconscious mind is listening to them. And your words, how you describe yourself or talk about yourself, it's always listening. Did you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned cats. I just wondered, if you didn't have your cats...
Yes.
It sounds a silly question.
Yeah.
Because people get very upset. How would that affect you?
If I didn't have my cats...
How would it affect you mentally, spiritually? I'm thinking of getting a...
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well,
yeah.
A cat, dog...
Yeah. I think a connection with an animal, particularly a mammal, warm-blooded, furry creature. So in this country it's usually a cat or a dog, but it could be a hamster or something else. Usually something like that's very tactile And there are studies that show that when we pet a cat or dog, we release oxytocin, and they also release oxytocin. So their brain is releasing a chemical, you know, when cats purr or dogs, you know, like they show you that they're enjoying that connection.
Yeah.
You know, you've got that kind of connection.
It'd be interesting to see if it's proven as a survey that people live longer if you've got.
Yeah.
I was trying to set up a session with equine therapy.
Oh yes.
Which unfortunately is supposed to be this week and got cancelled.
Oh.
It could be really quite interesting.
What a shame.
Well, that will happen, but
Yeah.
somewhere on top of it.
I think that's absolutely fascinating.
It will be quite interesting when I get there.
I think what I know about that subject is that when you're training horses, the whole thing about boundaries is really important, because I know someone who used to work with horses, and she used to say if a horse came in that had been disturbed in its, you know, upbringing and was quite skittish, she said she would go, first of all she would just go to the paddock where the horse was.
Yeah.
And then eventually she'd take another step, and if the horse stepped away, she would step in the opposite direction.
Right.
So eventually they would just do this kind of stepping towards the horse, side on, because obviously the horse is looking sideways, and eventually she would take a step towards the horse, and if the horse didn't move, she knew that was safe. So this conversation we're having about boundaries is quite, you know, kind of connected. And eventually she would get to put her hand on the horse, and eventually she would be able to ride the horse, you know.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. I may go there, I may literally stare at the horse,
Yeah.
or talk at its
Yes. Yeah.
Or, but it's interesting because the horse, you get more of a connection. You're actually sitting on a horse, so you've got actual direct
Absolutely.
connection.
Yes.
Rather than much you have with cats. So I'm just trying to work out the
Yeah. Absolutely.
levels where you go with this.
I think you're quite right, because I think, you know, there's an intuition between a horse and the rider. They read each other really, really well. And you know, I rode a pony as a child, you know, at Trent Park and things like that, but I wasn't ever at that level. But I know people who do ride at quite a high level, and the connection between the horse and the rider is so close, you know. And I think a lot of that is unconscious, because if you think about, you know, we don't have the same language, but we can communicate in another way. So yeah, fascinating, and I'd love to know what happens when you go there.
So nice.
It's also true when you're stroking fairy animals, it slows your heart rate down.
It does,
Yeah.
it does,
So
yeah.
That's the thing about living a longer life. Isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that companionship, and you know, that we are needed. We need that animal needs us, and we have that connection. And I think all of those things are so positive for us.
I think the GP should just say, don't come and see, just go and
Get a dog.
Yeah, get a dog or a cat, absolutely. Well, you know, lots of GPs are recommending people to go and do yoga, go for a walk, go to the park, you know, all the things that we all talk about at the Enfield Centre for Natural Health, because we are on the right track, aren't we, Tim?
So as a dog trainer,
Yes.
interesting, the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
Because even when the dog is asleep,
Yes.
you can still say, good boy,
Yes.
or good girl.
Yeah.
And that goes in because
Yeah.
it's wanted behaviour.
Yes.
So this is...
It's fascinating, isn't it, about that whole thing, about being able to hear. And I think this is right, Tim. When we are babies, the reflexes we have are like falling and loud noises. Is that right? I think that's it. Yeah, pretty limited. But and also when we're asleep, you know, we can't see, but we can still hear. You know, and obviously if there's danger, we need to be able to hear if something's going wrong. Okay, this one I really love. So, you know, people sometimes say fake it until you make it, but I would say fake it until you become it. So, if you say the words, you do the actions, you created your vision of where you want to be, what you want to do, and then you decide that this is what I want my future to be. So you have to put yourself in that position. You have to give yourself that opportunity to meet somebody or get the job that you want or be invited to the show or whatever it is, whatever you want to be, you have to put yourself in that place. Otherwise, nobody will know you're there, you know. So, and sometimes it can feel nerve-wracking and worrying and scary, but you have to just pretend that it's okay and say the right things and do the right facial expressions, and all of those things will line up together until you find yourself doing it, and then the next thing you know, it's happening. So this is what hypnosis is. That's all that hypnosis is. It's talking your client into believing that something is true now. And if they listen to that enough, and you have enough conversations like that, you've updated that programming. You've changed the soundtrack in their mind. You know, so if you imagine a little film in your head of a nice day, and then you put a really terrible, scary, you know, Dracula soundtrack on it, it doesn't look very good. But if you change the soundtrack and it's all happy and exciting, it changes the outcome. Because now it's like positive, uplifting, you know, soaring strings on a Disney film, and suddenly anything's possible. So that's all that hypnosis is, and it's about faking it until you become it.
Is it true with hypnosis you can only be hypnotised if you want to be hypnotised?
I believe so. That's what I believe. So I would say...
So if you come and say, I want to stop smoking, but you don't really want to?
Absolutely.
You won't stop?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that the only people I've ever had who were no-shows were smokers who don't really want to give up smoking. So they booked the appointment, they might have even paid, but then on the day they can't make it.
I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'll have two because I'm so annoyed.
I did a Flying Wall documentary a few years ago about hypnosis.
Yes.
And they couldn't hypnotise me at all.
Right.
Get yourself a pet.
Yeah. Well, what I would say about hypnosis and about trance is that we all go in and out of trance all the time.
I do,
so
coming down with a late night tube.
Yeah, exactly. But even if you're having
cock fosters instead of Oakwood.
Exactly. But if you're having a chat with somebody and you're in a busy cafe, you sort of tune out all the other things going on, or if you're by a road or something, you try to, because it can be quite difficult if it's noisy. Yeah, that's true. But you're kind of in that conversation with a person, and that means you're in a trance. Or if you're reading a book and you're lost in the story, or you're reading, you're sitting on the tube and you nearly missed your stop because you're so engrossed in what you're doing, that's a trance.
What I've found I've started doing recently, since I came to one of Tim's lectures here about acupressure, I close my eyes and do the acupressure stick in the underground, and that sort of blocks out everything at the same time. So I close my eyes, sort of semi-meditate, and doing the acupressure points at the same time. Because I'm travelling, so I might as well do something else when I'm travelling.
Absolutely, and that's a form of hypnosis, I would say.
Thank you.
Because you're taking yourself into another state. So maybe for you...
It does, you do find yourself getting tired of what you do.
Yeah.
It does seem to relax you as well.
But maybe for you, that's the physical touch is what's connecting you with that state.
It's psychosomatic, I don't care, it seems to work.
It seems to work, and that's it. If it works, why not? It's not hurting you, it's doing you good. So it's putting you in a different state, so that's a positive. Brilliant questions. Okay, so this one is really, really important. The most powerful relationship you will ever have is the relationship with yourself. So just as I was saying, all through your life you'll be there. So same thing. So I think this is a really crucial part of everything we've talked about today is self-love and being completely aligned with the best parts of yourself, improving the bits of yourself that you're not that happy with, accepting certain things about yourself. Remember I said, how much do you know yourself, accept yourself and like yourself? You don't have to like everything. If you can accept it, that's okay. Or if you don't like it, you might want to change it. And if you don't know it, maybe you want to learn about it. So, being completely comfortable in your own skin, in who you are, in this moment, not how I looked 20 years ago, but how I look now. Being happy to look in the mirror, receive compliments, and spend time in your own company, not running away from yourself. Because what I find is when people have lots of addictions, it's often because they don't want to face what's really there. So they're numbing those feelings with different substances or behaviours to not feel the thing that they're feeling. And I think a lot of people are afraid of their feelings because their feelings are not nice, they're negative and they're scary. So in order to get away from the feelings, they employ certain behaviours or things which might not be good for them. You know, if you're addicted to reading, it might be less dangerous than something else. But, you know, certain things aren't very good for us. So I think when you're on this sort of journey and you're really trying to be your own best friend, you allow yourself to feel the good, the bad, the ugly, and then you say, these are the bits I want to keep and these are the bits I want to let go of. And I really think this is a part that's often overlooked. You know, people might get the sort of success on the outside. You know, people say, oh, that person's really successful. They've got a family, they've got a job, they've got a home, blah, blah, blah. But actually, if they're not connected with themselves and they're authentic who they actually are, I think they're sort of missing something. And I'll just remind you what Confucius said about everywhere I go, there I am. So if I'm going to be there, I might as well be friends with myself. So I just want you to have a look at those. There's a little recap of some of the things that we've spoken about. And just...
Can you quickly itemise them, Karen?
Of course I can. Yeah, the first one is about working on your mindset every day. So feeding your mind. The next one was the lady with the garden. She was the creator. So she had been the victim and she turned into the creator. She said, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to do this thing I want to do? The next one is just about loving what you see. The next one was fake it until you believe it. And then at the bottom we've got one of the wells, which was a physical well. And the next two are, you know, an intellectual well, and then we've got a spiritual well and a sort of emotional well, like loving yourself. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay, brilliant. Right at the end now, you'll be glad to know. Okay, so just wanted to tell you two things, actually three things. First of all, I have a podcast that's going to be coming out in April. And it's almost March and I'm just getting started, but it is coming out in April. And it's going to be called The Authentic Connection. The first season, which will be 15 episodes, is going to be all about boundaries, being kinder to ourselves, and it's going to be connected with my book, which is coming out in May. Okay, so you don't need to remember any of this because I'll have one slide which will tell you about it. So that's the podcast. My book is coming out and I've got a prototype here which just arrived yesterday, which has, thank you, which has not for resale on the front and a few typos and mistakes which need to be corrected, but that's my book. So it's called Too Kind, a Survival Guide for Sensitive Souls, and it's about it's client stories from my work over the last 10 years, and it's, you know, the situation they were in and how they made it better. Any other questions or comments or experiences?
About post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
You lose a layer, or you...
Well, I was saying, you know, I was just kind of imagining a snake shedding its skin. You know, when it grows bigger, it releases its skin. And obviously every animal releases their fur, their skin and everything. We just don't see it as a whole husk, you know. But it's almost like we step out of that into something else, you know. We're sort of reborn, or and you know, when people have a sort of spiritual awakening, they say, don't they, I was reborn, something happened to me and it changed me completely. And you know, always hearing about people who've had near-death experiences or have had a serious illness or some kind of terrible accident, and when they regain their health and their strength, and they just feel completely different, you know, as if they've had an epiphany, a change. And that's called post-traumatic growth, the growth that happens after the trauma. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yes.
This might be an abstract question, but
Yeah.
in this country we have a bad situation of SAD in the winter.
Yeah.
Because you don't see any sunshine
Yeah.
for 4 months.
Yeah.
It's damp and horrible and cold
Yeah.
and whatever. It's not a dry cold, it's a damp cold, so it gets in your bones as well. So we all get damage, especially January.
Yeah.
with all what you're talking about well-being, is there any particular thing you could say
Yeah.
at those particular times? You could do something
Yeah.
to make yourself better about yourself,
Yeah.
and generally about life,
I would say,
other than getting a lamp or something.
yeah, I would say exercise
Yes.
releases
Releases endorphins.
endorphins, and so I would say exercise, and again I would say trying to enjoy the good things about that season. So you know, when it's
Are there any?
when it's like Christmas or that time
Well,
of
you don't
year.
like Christmas.
I know, well, you know, you could
But that's only a
probably,
commercial thing anyway.
well, you could probably look at it a different way. You could think about the hibernation season, you know, when it gets dark and all the animals and the whole animal kingdom slows down and tortoises go to sleep for a very long time, etc. So you could think about it a different way. It doesn't have to be linked with a particular, you know,
What do you do?
seasonal thing. What do? I try and enjoy each season for what it is. So I would say that I feel very fortunate to live in a country which has 4 quite distinct seasons, because I enjoy.
Well, they're a bit now.
They are a bit, yeah, getting a bit hot and cold, and you know, obviously all the stuff that's going on with the climate. But yeah, but you know, when I go to, say, over Christmas, I went to visit my family in Bangladesh, and it was very, very hot
They don't really
over
celebrate
Christmas.
Christmas anyway.
They don't, but it was just weird being December and being on the, like, walking around the beach with flip-flops. That was a bit strange. But when I came, it was lovely. But when we came back, it was just really lovely to feel the cold air, actually. And it felt like, oh, it's actually December, you know. It's almost like our bodies tune in to the different seasons. I mean, it's different for everyone, but I would say I try and enjoy each one for what it is. You know,
So you look for the
when in
positives.
Rome,
Looking for the positives.
I'm looking for the positives, always looking for the positives,
Okay.
looking for the silver linings, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Or comments or anything else? I blinded everybody with,
My dad smoked 40 a day for 67 years.
wow,
And he died at 92 and he enjoyed it.
yeah,
And he tried to give up, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you like smoking, smoke.
yeah. I think, I mean,
Poor chap, he could have lived to 120.
don't they say that in the blue zones, people live for a really long time in the blue zones in places like Japan and Taiwan and places like that, and it's something to do with the fish that they eat and the lifestyle they have, but they also smoke a lot, so it's kind of like they mitigate one with the other. Yeah, so you know, who knows.
Apparently it stops dementia. Because
Yeah.
It,
Omega-3.
what, smoking? Yeah.
Oh really? Oh, I thought you were talking about fish, sorry.
No, smoking is good for avoiding dementia.
Oh right,
Become aware you're dying of lung cancer.
yeah,
It's the Alzheimer's variety,
yeah,
but not the ischemic variety.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I think I am, therefore I must be.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so I think,
I just
yes.
had one flippant comment for Richard at the back there. Richard, I'm team cat. And the advantage of a cat is when
Cat rather than dog, yeah.
cat rather than dog or horse, because you know when a cat jumps on the bed, it's a lot more comfortable than a horse jumping on the bed and sleeping with you, and you've got much more room if it's a cat.
As well.
A cat is not necessarily waiting to be fed, it'll go out and find something to eat.
Yeah, that's
A
true.
lot of you know I'm involved with the healing world, and one of my healing colleagues years ago, her sister ran a stables up at Cock Foster's, and the other sister used to go and swim with dolphins in Florida, and you know communicate with them.
Yeah.
People go to swim with dolphins for healing, when you know stress reduction, etc.
Don't need to do that in the river.
And they describe the horses as the dolphins of the land because they have a similar sort
Yeah.
of energetic effect, very sort of beneficial effect.
Well, this guy, Michael Mortogo, has got a horse sanctuary. So he does with people who've got social problems, issues, you know.
Yeah.
They'll talk to a horse, they won't talk to a human being.
I think you should get a donkey.
It's incredible what goes on. You know?
Arnold Schwarzenegger, they live in your house.
I can't think of it.
The other healing thing I just drop, I've become a patron of the Harry Edwards Healing Sanctuary down in Shear, and my fellow patron is an animal healer called Liz Whiter. She runs healing animal healing organisation, I think it's called, based down in Sussex. And I mean, she does amazing things. She goes all over the world healing animals. She's just off to Cyprus soon with a team to heal stray dogs in Cyprus.
Wow.
Hundreds of them.
Amazing.
She's healed jaguars. She's healed sun bears.
Wow.
You know, you name it, she's healed it. And she's going to come and do a talk in London later in the year, up at the Rudolf Steiner House.
What's her name again?
Her name is Liz Whiter. So if anyone's interested, I'll probably post it on the Facebook group, and it's open to the public. You know, guests are very welcome. That should be an amazing talk.
Is it W-H-I-T-E-R, Whiter, or spelled another way?
White with an R on the end, you're spot on.
Okay. Steiner House, okay.
And horse healing, one of our previous speakers, way back, is on the YouTube channel that John recorded for us, Joe Shaw. So if you want to see some amazing history and video of horse healing, Joe Shaw on the YouTube channel.
Of course, there's this thing about medical dogs, you know, that smell disease on people up in Milton Keynes.
A lot of animals can do that. You can train dogs to smell anything you like, you know, like they use it for sniffing out things in airports.
Well, they can be 95% accurate on the cancer, though.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
They're better than doctors.
Not all of them, Leslie.
Sorry.
But not so much on the sniff, though, I noticed.
That's why Richard wants a dog. He doesn't want to go to the doctors anymore.
Would it do better than a consultant, though?
Yeah, because they show these files with the spaniels, and the spaniels sort of, it's that one.
Yeah, you see.
And you saw that one, and the doctor's like, no, that person hasn't got cats. So they tried it again. The dog sat by the same file. They tested it again. The dog was correct. So,
I think pigeons have that.
Pigeons? Really?
Cancer, so
Really?
they've got really keen vision.
With no
Wow.
training, they just sort of, you don't have to have a signal or...
No, they just peck at certain.
Wow.
They know they've just got really keen vision. That's why.
That's amazing.
Interesting.
Wow.
Spot cancer before cancer.
Fascinating. Wow.
They peck the parts of the body that needs treating.
Oh, sorry. I mean on an MRI scan. So
Oh.
they look at an MRI scan and they can see the cancer cells on the scan.
Oh my gosh, that's
And the
amazing.
human eye can't.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was a
How interesting.
country file program actually.
Wow. How amazing.
Use AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So Tim, how do we close?
So I think we're wrapping up and people are going now. Lovely to see you all. Hope to see you at the next talk. And a big thanks again for Zeenat. All the best for your
Thank
book
you.
launch in
Thank
May.
you. Thank you very much.